Lee in Long Island, New York. He got walking papers from the school when he blew up the chemistry lab of Rio Negro. He had great reputation among a circle for having courage to raise his hands and say things in German that got him thrown out of German class. And he's had one of the most interesting lives. His bio is in the program. It's been a privilege to know him, and I've had a delight having dinner with him. We both changed our lifestyles, and John's going to tell you about his. John?
Thank you, Steve. Let me just preface this presentation with a short explanation. I have no medical background. I know Dr. Clearwater thinks that's cute, but I don't have any medical background. This is part of this is life story. Aviation falls into this, as well as technology and medical research, especially animal research, because that's what I essentially use to come up with this. My own theories of heart disease, what causes it, how to prevent it, and more importantly, how to actually reverse heart disease. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Okay, a little bit of history. My first surgery back in 1993, I had the typical, I was living on an animal protein-rich diet. My cholesterol at the time was in excess of 300 milligrams per deciliter, extremely high. And I had the pain with exertion. And I underwent at that time, in 1993, a cabbage times 5. So I had, at that point, 5 bypasses put on my heart. But I was totally ignorant of heart disease. So right away I thought, well, let's follow the American Heart Association diet and look at religion, and we're going to attack this problem. But as you'll see, for example, the American Heart Association diet, if you are prone to heart disease, will only give you more heart disease. So what we did at this time, we eliminated the red meat. We eliminated the fried foods. We eliminated the saturated or trans fats. We continue to eat fish and chicken, however. And I was still consuming dairy products and using lots of olive oil. For all the good things about the good oils and the bad oils. But you'll see later why that's maybe something we should be careful with. I also changed my lifestyle. I started to run and continued to do strength training. Started doing strength training about 3 days a week, and did quite a bit of running. In fact, in my career now, since my first open heart surgery, I've run 9 marathons and probably somewhere in the vicinity of 25 half marathons, and quite a few other races. So we did. As far as the aerobics is concerned, I do a daily aerobic activity, with the exception of this week, of course. So at this point in my life, my cholesterol was down below 200 milligrams per deciliter. And I thought, well, all is well. I'm doing the right things. I'm following all of the recommendations. But more heart disease. So now we find out, in addition to having the 5 bypass grafts on my heart, I'm informed that, gee, you have a strange sounding heart valve, John. And they tell me then I have aortic stenosis. Well, at this point, I started doing my homework. Started doing quite a bit of research. And the first thing I did, I had about 5 years to do my research on heart valves. So what I did is I looked at the different types of valves. I have to remember this is 10 years ago. And I wanted to see what type of valves were available at the time. And the number of surgeons that I would want to operate on. And I used some interesting criteria. First, I read up on all the valves. Human homograph valves, the pig valves, the mechanical valves, and at the time, 10 years ago, the mechanical valves were probably favored with coolant use. And I also narrowed my search down to 3 surgeons. And the criteria I used there was kind of interesting. I looked at the most difficult valve surgery that's being done. And that turned out to be the Ross procedure, which is a double valve transplant inside the human heart, where they take literally the pulmonary valve, put it in the aortic position, and then put in a homograft into the pulmonary position. Very difficult surgery inside the heart. So I looked at the statistics and searched around the country to see how many surgeons have done number one Ross procedures, how successful they were, how many of their patients died. I looked for all these stats, and I came up with 3 surgeons in the United States that have operated. And 2 valve types at that time. The 2 valves I chose were either a Carpentier-Edwards pericardial valve or a human donor valve, homograft. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. I decided in 2003, I had been applying to the New York City. I had grown up in New York City, that's where I was born. And I had been applying to the New York Marathon to run it for about 5 years. I always was rejected because they kept it to, I think, 30 or 40,000 words. And it was very tough to get in. Well, this particular year, I have aortic stenosis. And the last test they told me my aortic valve was only opening 0.6 of a centimeter square. Heart valve, folks know. The normal aortic valve opens 3 to 4 centimeters square. Well, mine was only opening about 6 centimeters. And I think I had a pressure gradient across the aortic valve, somewhere in the vicinity of 60 millimeters of mercury. Pretty hot. And my left ventricle was starting to enlarge. But me being stubborn, I decided I was going to run the New York City Marathon. And I did. I literally ran the New York City Marathon. I struggled on all the bridges. I had to walk the bridges. I could just barely break a jog on level ground. And I was able to run pretty good downhill with only 0.6 of a centimeter opening in my aortic valve. Of course, I never told my cardiologist. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting because there was some divine intervention. 3 weeks after the New York City Marathon, I end up on a cath table at Miami Valley Hospital in Naples. A cardiologist, Tom Ford. And at this point, you have to remember, I have been studying some cardiology. In fact, I told Dr. Toledo that I literally, years prior to that, had signed up as a cardiologist with Medstream and started taking all the CME courses, even though I wasn't a cardiologist. But I only took the courses that I was interested in. I wanted to study about heart valves. So here I am on the heart cath table with Dr. Thornton, my cardiologist, and he's doing the cath on me. And he's got the screen up there, both of us are looking at my heart. He threads the catheter through my aortic valve, and he says, "John, your heart valve is shot." He said, "Not only is it stenotic," he says, "now it's regurgitating and it's leaking. You can't even leave this hospital." So I looked at him and I said, "Dr. Thornton, by the way, 3 weeks ago I ran the New York City Marathon." He said, "You what?" He said, "You should be dead." So, he said, "I want you to leave. I want to have a surgeon work on you immediately." I know some of you mechanical heart people won't like this comment, but heart valve people. I looked him straight in the face and I did all my homework, mind you. And I said, "Dr. Thornton, if I stay here at Miami Valley Hospital, your surgeon's going to put a mechanical heart valve in me. And I'm going to end up living on, rat poison for the rest of my life." So, being a very active individual, I didn't want anything to do with coma. So, at that point, he puts me in the recovery. You have to seal up the femoral artery to keep it from bleeding out. Of course, your arteries heal very quickly. And I'm laying there with the compress on my leg. Here's where the divine intervention comes in. I get on the phone. I dial the Cleveland Clinic. And I ask Dr. Ghostly Pedersen by name. Who answers the phone? Dr. Pedersen. Now, what are the odds you call a major hospital and ask for one of the best surgeons on staff, and he answers the phone? Divine intervention. That's the only explanation I have for it. He talks to me on the phone. I tell him this whole story over the phone. He says, "John, stay right there at the hospital. I want you to get some additional tests done. Send all the results up here. I'm going to operate on you next week." So I leave Miami Valley Hospital. When I think within 3 days, my wife and I drove up to Cleveland. And we had all the test results up there. And Dr. Tom Ford did a wonderful heart cath because he knew where it was going, to the Cleveland Clinic. So he really did a very thorough job on the cath. And he sat down with Dr. Pedersen. He agreed with me. And so these are the two valve types on my homework that I think I would like to have. He said, John, in your case, if we go with the homograft, you'll get the best hemodynamics you'd like to run. But he said, there's a downside. Most of these homografts, when they're put in, this is 10 years ago, he said the aortic root dilates, and then sometimes in a short time they start to leak. They don't last. But he said, for you, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take the entire conduit from the cadaver valve, a section of that person's aorta with the valve. I'm going to sew that into the heart. He did that 10 years ago. And I might add, the last echocardiogram I had, that valve, you put in my heart, is still functioning better than my 3 native valves. It doesn't leak at all. And there's no calcium in it. It's still working perfectly. So, then I go to the Cleveland Clinic, he puts the valve in me, and I looked at my surgeon, and I said, I want to train. This was Christmas week of 2003. I said, I want to train for the upcoming Air Force Marathon, the 26-mile marathon. He looked at me like I was crazy. He pulls the drain tubes out of my chest, and I said, if I push this heart right now, will I damage everything? He says, no, all that arterial stuff heals up very quickly. He said, there's a treadmill down the hall. So I pulled the drain tubes out of my chest, I climbed out of the bed, went down the hall, and I started running on the treadmill. But I didn't know my lung was half collapsed. And I couldn't breathe, but I tried. So, but then that was the beginning of my training. So I ended up with the AVR plus 2 more catheters. They took my left radial and put it on my heart. And they took the left mammary had already been done. Then they put the right mammary on, moved it over. And so now I'm training for the Air Force Marathon. And part of this, I should tell this part of the story as well. As one of my training runs, I run the Parkersburg, West Virginia half marathon. And they gave me a beautiful stone finisher's medal. And I drove home from West Virginia, and I said to my wife, you know, I'm going to do something I think people should do. Here I have someone else's heart valve, and they've given me this beautiful medal. Now, I knew the serial number from the Cleveland Clinic, I knew the number, but you never know who the donor is. So what I did is I took and wrote a thank you letter, took the medal, put it in the letter, and I mailed it to LifeNet, Virginia Beach, the people who supply the organs. Just put the thank you letter. I said, please forward this to the family that donated my heart valve, because people, when they lose a loved one, never know the good they're doing by donating that organ. Well, about 3 months passes. One day I go out to the mailbox and there's a letter from LifeNet. I open it up, and sure enough, inside that letter is another. Now, I'm sorry, but this one gets me upset. The mother wrote me a big long letter about her son and how he had been killed in a car wreck. He was 29 years old, and he gave me this heart valve. So, and it's still working perfectly to this day. But anyway, so at that point, I increased my statin dose, and my 2004 nuclear scan shows normal. No ischemia. No ischemia in the heart now. By the way, there's Dr. Pedersen, because after the race, when I ran the Air Force Marathon, I said to the wife, come on, get in the car, we're going. And we drove to Cleveland, and he got the award, not because he deserved it. I gave him a medal. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. The FAA, I always wanted to fly. The FAA requires you to get scanned. So now, a couple of years have passed now, and we're into like 2006. Nuclear scan reveals heart ischemia. My left ventricle is now starving for blood and oxygen. Taking flying lessons. I even went out and purchased an antique Lusker. Learned to fly it. It's an aircraft that was designed in 1937. It's old-fashioned, you have to stick and rudder, no instruments, you just learn to fly. So, at this point, I was really upset. I said, gee, I'm doing everything right, and I'm still showing ischemia in my heart. Something's not right here. We're treating symptoms, we're not treating the cause of heart disease. So again, the CME, the Medscape. I keep doing my research, and I discovered Dr. Esselstyn's book in Clearwater. He wrote Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, and then also the China Study. Those are the two books. Both of these men grew up on dairy farms. This is their lifelong work. I'd say that I highly recommend anyone with heart disease read Prevent and Reverse. It's a simple read. Half the book is recipes. The China Study, however, is a much more complex read. It gets into his study of China, rural China, of the eating habits of the peasants in rural China. I believe it was a 17-year period in about 20 different provinces. What they ate, what they died from, and they monitored their blood lipids for like 20 years. Extremely interesting reads. Now, I start in April of 2007. I start the whole food, plant-based diet. When I say that, that's whole food, plant-based, no animal protein, no dairy, no added oil. Everything we eat has oil in it. Not even the good oils, you know. I was eating a lot of olive oil. Dramatic change in my blood lipids. My total cholesterol dropped to 96 milligrams per deciliter. My LDL dropped to 31. Then I started, this is where the animal research, and I thank all of you in this room for your animal research, because when I started to search for ischemia and angiogenesis and arteriogenesis, most of the human studies were based on cancer research. How to prevent angiogenesis from feeding a cancerous tumor. Well, that's not what I was interested in. I want to know how to promote angiogenesis. What makes it work in a living creature. So, what I did discover from your animal studies is that ischemia, if you stress ischemic tissue, and here's the key, if the tissue is healthy and you stress it, you get angiogenesis. And the typical study that I used was there was either a dog model, rabbit, or rat. They ligate the frontal artery. We force the animal to run 2 hours. And after 2 weeks, you do an angiogram of the animal's leg, and there's a whole network of arteries going right around the ligated frontal artery. Well, you know, me not having a medical background, if it works in a rat, it'll work in a human. So what do I do? But I figured out you have to have a healthy endothelium for this to occur. And if you want the vascular growth, you want to create the VEGF, growth factors. And again, the diet, you have to get a lot of green leafy vegetables. You get that nitric oxide in the interior of the endothelial lining. Now, here's what I did. This I never share with the public. Only in this group will I share this. I purchased a portable ECG monitor. Ran on batteries, global display. I put the electrodes on my chest, got on an elliptical trainer at our gym, put the display in front of my face, and I cranked that machine up until I saw ST segment depression in my left ventricle. At that point, my heart is starving for blood and oxygen. It's ischemic. So what did I do then? I added just a tad more resistance to the machine, and I held my heart in ischemia for 2 hours at a clip. Same thing they did to the rats, the dogs, and the rabbits. Now, guess what happened after 2 weeks? No more ST segment depression. What grew all the arteries? Little, not just little arteries, it grew arteries. It fed itself, it repaired itself. Now, I developed also a maintenance protocol, which I'll talk about as well. But I volunteered at the point my insurance had run out. I had sold my business. So I had to find a way to get the images. So I would go and find out who was installing the brand new 64-size CAT scan machine by the hospital. And I'd call them up, get a hold of the sales rep who was putting in the equipment. I'd say, hey, we need a volunteer to test that machine out. So I go, and what we found in my first one at Christ Hospital, where they were putting in, I think it was a Siemens machine, I got the Siemens system. And also it was a cardiology class too going on. They had cardiology students. So I said, I'm your volunteer. I got plenty all over my mind. You guys will have fun looking at my images. So here's what they found. My perfusion, though 5 of the grafts on my heart had completely occluded. They were blocked, calcified, dead. My heart was showing normal perfusion. Well, how can this be? There's a letter, in fact, that was from Christ Hospital, where they even talk about occluded rema to PDA, occluded radial graft. The radial didn't even last 6 months, it went dead. Occluded junk graft, SVG to circumflex to PDA, they're all dead. Here I was with normal perfusion. That doesn't make sense, does it? I volunteered at a chemical hospital. They were pretty good. And I got very friendly with the technologist who does the imaging technologist. So, what we found was we were growing new arteries in the heart. Literally, this really amazed him, the technologist. He said, I've never seen this. He said, you've actually grown a new artery under the apex of your heart, which feeds the lag to the PDA, and you're feeding it, blood flow is in retrograde, it's going backwards into that part of your heart muscle. As you can see, there's an actual image of my heart. It doesn't show it very well, but there's arteries going around and around the apex of the heart. But the next image is the one that really is the proof of the pudding, right here. If any of you know how to read these, this is just a little over a year ago. Cardiologist had me go in for a scan. He wanted me to have a stress test with a nuclear scan, so I had to get the nuclear imaging done. And when they put me on the treadmill, they told me, John, we're going to run you to 90% of your heart rate, and then we're going to shoot you with the radioactive isotope, and we'll image your heart. And I said to them, no. Because you're going to remember now, the FAA, they don't know to fly. The FAA did not issue me an airman's medical with the history I had. I can't blame them, really. They would not issue me an airman's medical because they said you have ischemia. If you have ischemia, you cannot fly. Well, here's this image. They said they're going to run me to 90% of my heart rate. I said, no, I said to the nurse, please not. I'll tell you when you shoot me with the dye. I said, I'm going to run you. When my heart is at 110% of maximum heart rate, you shoot me with the isotope, which they did. First they thought I was going to drop dead on the treadmill. So I ran that thing to 110%, they shot me with the image. 3 days later, I come back, my cardiologist on floor, he's the same age I am, by the way, I think he's maybe a year older. He brings the images out and the report, and he reads it to me. And he says, John, he said, I've been a cardiologist for a lot of years. He said, this I have never seen. Point two of these images out.
Did you point it, Jim?
Yeah, I got one here. Yeah. Well, in fact, if you see this line, this is rest, this is stress. This is my rest image right here on the end. That's my stress image. So over 100% of maximum heart rate, my stress image is better than my rest image. And he says that's not supposed to be. He says the reason we give this test is to stress your heart out to see how much blood and oxygen you lose when it's under stress. This is you're showing better image of stress than you're at rest. So you know what I did with this image? I took this image and the write-up, and I wrote a little cover letter, and I sent it to Dr. Brian Johnson in Oklahoma City, who is the specialist that the FAA uses to analyze people for airman's morals. Thank you very much, just the images. I said, please pull all my records. Well, there's 7 years of records, and we'd be able to check them. He wrote me a personal letter back. And he said, John, he says, you're absolutely right. There's no scheme to draw. Go get yourself a fresh airman's medical, and a fresh physical. I'm going to issue an airman's medical. Which he did. So, and there it is. They issue, the FAA never does this. 2 open heart surgeries, they issue someone an airman's medical, they don't do it. So I proved to them that I reversed heart disease and eliminated ischemia in my heart. Now, this is my daily protocol. I literally run this every day, except this week I've been cheating. But this is a daily routine. I strength train 3 days a week, but cardiovascular, heart and lungs, in my opinion, you have to do it every day. So here's what I do. I do a 10-minute warm-up, and you do this by age-adjusted heart rate. So I do a 10-minute warm-up, and bring my heart up to 70% of my maximum age-adjusted heart rate. Take 10 minutes to do it gradually. Then I do a 4-minute interval. This is interval training. This is the key. If you want to increase your performance or your oxygen uptake, you must do intervals. You have to stress that tissue. So, 4-minute interval at 90%, and then I back down for 3 minutes at 70, 4 minutes at 90. So, in other words, 4 iterations of this protocol. Then I just do a 5-minute cool down for a total of 40 minutes. And I can do that on an elliptical, I can do it on a bicycle, I can even do it running. So just take your pick. And the advice I give to people is, since I'm 70 years old, I don't want to destroy my knees, is number one, if you're going to run, get off the pavement, run on the trails. And number two, cross-train. Don't do the same thing. You have to cross-train. You need some impact. That's why I do the running. I don't do a lot of running anymore. But I do a half marathon. I did it last Saturday. So that's my protocol for maintaining the heart. And now, where do I get my protein? People say, oh, you know, you've been brainwashed since we were kids. You have to eat animal products to get quality protein. Nothing could be further from the truth. You do not need animal products. Whole food, plant-based diet, no animal protein, no dairy products, no oil. There's a friend, my wife and I met at the zoo, old man gorilla. And I took that picture of the gorilla at the zoo. And then I did some research on what he eats in the wild. Oddly enough, what he eats in the wild is primarily fruit. He eats a lot of fruit and a lot of green leafy vegetables. He might get a few termites. That's about the only animal protein he gets. And the bugs in the fruit. He's our closest relative. I guess you folks would know better than I. He's probably about 96% genetic, according to human, or 99 point something. But he's pretty close. And his teeth are like ours. He's not a meat eater. Hello? A lot of people say, oh, you gotta eat meat. No, you don't. I'm not a carnivore. I'm a herbivore. Okay. Now, you talked about the elephant in one of the other presentations. There he is. How did he get so big? He doesn't even eat animal products. He's a huge animal. You know, a lot of this is just common sense. That's Carl Lewis. He won 11, I think it's 11 gold medals. I think 9 of them were gold medals. The man's a vegetarian. He doesn't eat animal protein. He looks pretty muscular, pretty strong to me. All right, now, if you're going to eat out, these are some of the restaurants we go to, but the reason I put this up is when you're traveling, we primarily eat fruits, vegetables, and grains. You can always go to a Chinese restaurant and come steam you a bunch of vegetables. You can even get rice noodles. Steam it. Don't put the junk on it. It's the salt, which raises the blood pressure, you all know that. The salt, the fat, and the sugar that you have to do. Keep the cells in your body healthy. Now, the thing that I think was very interesting in all this research we did, I believe I've discovered why the angiogenesis process works in the animal models and works so poorly in humans. It's all diet. That's why it doesn't work in humans. But it did work in me, because I changed my diet. I've been on this diet for almost 8 years. So, the endothelial lining of those arteries must be healthy for it to work. But most of the things they try in humans are people with heart disease who are already sick. All the cells in their body are sick. They're not eating right. You can stress that tissue what you want. All you do is put them into a heart attack. And I think I proved my point because I pushed my heart into ischemia, and instead of giving me, it probably should have given me a heart attack, but it didn't. It grew arteries instead, which is the same thing it does in the animal models. But if I tell this story to a group of cardiologists or medical professionals, they kind of chuckle. They don't believe it. Because they don't understand, really, they don't understand diet. They really don't. It's all nutrition. And sure, there's genetics in this, but I still say 90% of the diet will override the genetics if you eat properly. That's how important it is. This next image, I think, proves the point. Well, it's not just for heart disease also. Obesity, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, arthritis, it's all related to diet. By the way, that's my cholesterol history. 1993, 2003, 2008, it's not good, not the same. And one meal doesn't make a difference. You know, people say moderate eating. I do this in moderation. Do you smoke in moderation? No. You want cancer, smoke in moderation. If you're going to eat a lot of fat, don't do it in moderation, just quit it. You have to quit it. Now, some of us are blessed with the ability to eat junk food and not get heart disease. We should see people all come with heart disease. But if you are genetically prone to heart disease, you must go to the extreme end if you want to reverse it. The American Heart Association diet, for example, may slow down the progression of heart disease, but the process continues. The arteries continue to block. I've proven, without a doubt, I've got the images to prove it, that you can reverse the heart disease and literally grow arteries if you really want to try. You know, I had visited Dr. Esselstyn up at his, and he invited me to his home. He thought I was an instrument case. And he looked at my images. He said, John, he said, I've got images. I show a lot of patients where I reverse heart disease and have to actually have arteries open up. But he said, I don't know about you. You've got 7 grafts in your heart. He said, I don't know if that's going to work. And that's why I really did this research. I said, I have to figure out a better way to do it. If the human body can repair itself, there must be a way to do this. Let's stress the tissue. Angiogenesis works. If you stress only healthy tissue, it works. Sick tissue is not going to work. And that's the key. You have to have healthy cells in the body for it to function. By the way, that's our ride. That's how we got here. We flew all the way from Ohio. It was designed in 1937, so less than an hour to fly. And this one, let's see if it works. I'll give you a little demonstration here. Let's see. Nope. Go back. It's not working. I was going to show you how I loop and spin in the plane. He knows how to do it. Let the boss do it. All right. With only 65 horsepower, you have to dive down 125 miles an hour. Pull back on the stick, keep going. We lost it. But anyway.
Stay there.
We're stuck in space. In fact, we'll just move it to the spinner, we can do that. Literally, I do loops in space, and then the one I wanted to show you is what kills most pilots. By mistake, when they do it by mistake, it kills them. And they're too close to the ground. But you have to remember, I'm about 3,500 feet, and but anyway, we do that. I had 3 loops in there. I was going to scroll over to the spin. I literally put the plane in the tailspin, and you'll see it spinning to the ground with this spiral. And I have the GoPro camera mounted on the wing. Okay, there's the scroll bar. Okay, there's the loop over the top. You see I'm upside down. That's what a loop looks like from inside a plane, folks. You ever want to try it. And I'm going to move over to about here. That's my last loop. That's my airfield just below us there. Just sort of go by. And now I'm going to do something that kills most pilots when they're too close to the ground by mistake. I'm going to intentionally pull back on the throttle, lay into the left rudder, stall the left wing, and throw it into a tailspin. That's what it looks like. So I'm spiraling toward the ground, and I pull it out. Then the last one I do, I actually combine the spin and then I throw it into a loop. We'll just move to the next one. Next slide. Last slide. There we go. All right. Okay. And here's where we're going to do some questions, but if I've got a few minutes, do I have a few minutes, Steve?
Yes, you do.
Okay, because I want to tell a little bit of story here. Because this is last Saturday. We all ran the Air Force half marathon at Dayton, Ohio, right past Naples. Me on the left, a wonderful wife, Barbara, who, by the way, keeps me alive with her cooking. She's a wonderful, wonderful chef. And that's her friend Kay. I talked about healthy cells in the body. I did all my research for the endothelial lining of the arterial cells in my body. Well, this fellow on the right here is Jerry Moore. Jerry is 83 years old. Jerry did the race with me. He walked it, granted, but he went a half marathon at 83. I think he was the oldest man in the race, or close to the oldest, out of 15,000 runners in the race. But the reason I'm bringing up Jerry is because Jerry, about 8 years ago, was going blind. He had wet macular degeneration. He was going blind, he lost his driver's license, he could barely see. I said, Jerry, I'm doing all this research on my arteries. And I said, what you have is a problem with the arteries in the retina, the eye, behind the eye. I said, why don't you try my diet? Maybe it'll help. Jerry, man, worse than me, he got really strict. He went on the exact diet I just showed you. He went on the diet of whole food, plant-based, he eliminated the oil. He doesn't touch any oil or anything. I gotta tell you. After a couple of years, his eyes, well, first off, his eyes immediately stopped bleeding. He's been on the diet now for 5 years. His eye doctor said, Jerry, what did you do? Your macular degeneration, you haven't had a bleeding episode now in 5 years. I went to my wife's car, passed his eye test, and I went to my wife's car and got his driver's license back. Right? So don't tell me that changing your diet doesn't work. It works. It worked for his eyes. It's a coincidence? Now again, it's a one-off study. You guys are all scientists here, so. But that's the point I want to make. The diet works. Well, I'm living proof. Like I said, I should have been dead probably 20 years ago. All of my first cousins died 10 years ago before my age. All my first cousins. All of them. Heart disease. Killed them all. That's genetics. So I've been able to override the genetics of the diet. Now, I'm talking too much. Questions, please. I thank all of you for your animal research, because it's because of your animal research that I was able to accomplish this. Because no doctor, no cardiologist, I don't think any heart institute would take a human being, put electrodes on their heart, on their chest, and run them into ischemia and let them run for 2 hours in ischemia. There's a doctor in the audience. Would you think any doctor would do that to a human being? No. My cardiologist thought I was crazy when I told him what I was going to do. He said, John, you can't do that. You're going to drop dead in the hot water. I guess he was wrong. No questions?
Any questions for John?
Yeah, sure.
Of course. Do you have any opinion on chelation?
On chelation, I read about the chelation therapy. I still think it's diet. You can try and clean things out, but what happens when you change your diet like that, you see an immediate change in your body. I even noticed it in my running. Within a matter of weeks, when I went on that diet, I noticed I could even run better. I was getting better blood flow. The arterioles, the very small arteries, start to react right away. The line of the artery, you can actually feel more endurance. My endurance improved, and to this day, I still run. My favorite run, I run, we have a lake near our home called Caesar Street Lake. It's in a big state park. And it's in February. It's my favorite run because I have to run 15 miles in the snow on that lake. And I do it every year. I did it last year. And there was no one even within 10 years of my age in the race. It's all kids. What can I say? 7 bypass grafts, replaced heart valve, and replaced section of my aorta, and I'm still going. Proof is important. And you saw the images. There was no ischemia in my heart. And all of the grafts that were put on there by surgeons are dead, shriveled up, calcified. And the other thing I can't explain, and I've asked a number of surgeons about this, is why, after 10 years, if we image my heart valve, it doesn't show any calcium on it. Because as you all know, that valve was soaked in glutaraldehyde to kill all the living cells. So basically, they put a collagen matrix in it that looks like a human heart valve. But again, theory, this I don't know. But maybe because I've made my endothelial lining and my arteries so healthy, who knows? Maybe some of those endothelial cells have taken up residence in the matrix. I don't know. I guess after I'm dead, you guys can come help me and see. My pleasure.
So, I do think John believes in miracles too.